We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Ave Maria Stella, Dei Mater Alma, ad semper Virgo, Felix te porta.
Welcome, everyone. Steve with Sensus Fidelium coming at you with a long-time guest of the program. Back in the day when everyone was shoved in their corners on their couches and not allowed to go outside, Mr. Charles Coulombe, Duke of LA, Archduchess, Duchy of Burgundy. I'm making things up now. Anyway, renowned author and talking about Zita, and he also did her husband, Blessed Karl. So, anyways, welcome back, Charles. How you doing, man?
Well, not bad, not bad. Not missing the COVID days. It's great that our owners have allowed us out of the toy box so we can play again. Lucky us. We can pretend we're grown ups. Well, not entirely. We can't smoke and drink at the same time, so I guess we're not really grown up. But to the degree that our owners let us, we can play grown ups.
We are thankful for that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, be warned, viewer discretion advised. We might talk about the New York Yankees. We might talk about the topic we're here about. We may talk about food. We don't know. It can go any which way. If somewhere during this conversation we go from Zita to Frank Sinatra, we will eventually get back to Zita. Trust me.
We will get back to Zita because I wrote a biography of her and not of Frank. Now, mind you, I know people who knew Frank, and I never knew Frank. Just so you know, I mean, we get this straight. I have friends who are good friends of Frank Sinatra's, but I don't know anyone who knew Sinatra and Zita.
That'd be something. Yeah.
I know people who knew Zita. I know people who knew Sinatra. I don't know people who knew both.
6 degrees separation. Maybe the Sound of Music lady, Fräulein Maria, might have known.
Now we don't want to bring up Sound of Music. Not to Austrians. They get a little bent out of shape.
No.
Let's just say there's a lot wrong with the Sound of Music if you're an Austrian.
Yeah.
For one thing, the wonderful escape scene at the end.
Yeah.
Well, if they were escaping over the mountains from Salzburg, it would put them in Germany.
Yeah.
So be assured that's not how it happened.
Yeah, I think I saw it. They actually left by train. It wasn't exactly as theatrical as the movie showed it.
Yeah, I mean, well, as I said, it would have ended up in Germany. And I pointed this out to my dad when I was a little kid. We went to see the film. And even then, because of my grandfather, I knew geography. He was Austrian. I said, Dad, they're escaping into Germany. And my father says, that's right, son. They're going to hide out in Wilhelmshaven. No one will look for them there. Wilhelmshaven is where the baron was supposed to be assigned by the Nazis. So my dad's idea was that they went there anyway, knowing that that's the last place on earth they'd look for them.
Put up shop right next to Hitler, like next door.
Yeah, they're living next door to party headquarters. The Nazis completely oblivious. Who was the neighbors? What do I know? But no, the Sound of Music has some factual issues that Austrians they drive them crazy. One movie they do tend to like about themselves that we made was The Third Man. I guess it's primarily because the major villain is American, but the cinematography of Vienna after the war is astonishing. And to this day, whenever I go to an older apartment building in Vienna, and I go up the winding staircase, I can just about hear that zither music in my head, And then the third movie, this is all Americans generally know about Austria are the three movies. Sound of Music is best known, followed by Third Man. The third is a Disney film, The Flight of the White Stallions, about the rescue of the Lipizzanos. And that, if you grew up on Disney, you saw that. And that's probably the least objectionable to the Austrian mind of the three films, because it was actually made with the close supervision of the man who lived the story. So
don't worry, Disney will find a way to screw that up in the next month or two.
Well, they'll do a remake, and all of the Austrian male characters will be played by American black women. It won't make any sense because they'll keep the names.
Yeah.
So, Captain von Tarnenheim. Yeah, what you want? But it won't make any sense. Why should it?
Yeah, exactly. That's the new motto for Disney. It doesn't make any sense. Why should it?
Well, I'll tell you, if there was anything, now I get to go back on topic for a second.
Yeah.
If there was anything that Empress Zita's life proved, it's that things really do make sense. And if you're a believer, you have to trust in God an awful lot, but it'll make sense at some point later on. Because it's not going to make sense now, I promise.
And that's darn sure. The first part of the book is you're bringing up the history leading up to them, trying to get a little foundation for why are they even there? How did they even become emperor and empress and all that? And then the second half is what you're saying. The story behind her, especially after Charles's death, is just, how'd she pull that off? Almost.
It was a combination of deep faith and being tough as nails. And she was. A fellow who knew her said to me, on the one hand, have you vanished or gone?
Oh, I'm here. I just figured everybody wanted to look at Zita and not me.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I can well believe that she's a saint. On the other, if you told me that she ate iron filings for breakfast every morning, I'd believe you. Because she was extremely feminine, but very much the mailed fist on the velvet glove, under the velvet glove. And she had to be. I mean, you're looking at a woman who, she's in her early 30s. Her husband's died. She's living on an island in the middle of nowhere with no money. She has 7 kids, and she's pregnant with an 8th. Mm-hmm. Now, her upbringing in no way prepared her for this kind of a life. She was born to wealth. Her father, although he was the deposed Duke of Parma, he had a huge personal fortune. He had married twice. His first wife, he had 12 kids with. She died. His second wife was a Portuguese princess. That was Zita's mother, and another 12, including Zita. So there are 24 of these Bourbon Parma kids. And they lived until their father died in 1909. They lived in a life of extraordinary piety, but also wealth. Mm-hmm. And every year they would travel between France and Italy and Austria. And really, she had a very idyllic upbringing. Then her father dies, which wasn't so much fun. But 2 years later, she's courted by and marries the heir to the throne, the future heir to the throne, because his uncle, him being Karl, his uncle being Franz Ferdinand, was married, but had married morganatically. And so his children, morganatically meaning he had married non-royal, and that meant that his children could not inherit the throne. And that's why his nephew, Karl, was the heir, was his heir, him being the heir to the Emperor Franz Joseph. Well, long and short of it is that this was a very privileged, a very pleasant life. And you would not think it would equip her for what happened. But she marries Karl in 1911. They begin having children straight away in 1912. In 1914, Franz Ferdinand, who was not just the heir to the throne and not just the cause, it's not just in his assassination, set off World War I. It's more than that. He was Karl's personal mentor, Karl's own father being dead in kind of a scapegrace, Franz Ferdinand's younger brother. But Franz Ferdinand was very much his mentor in terms of family and faith and politics and so forth. And Franz Ferdinand had a very definite idea of how he wanted to change Austria-Hungary in such a way as to keep it going a lot longer. He was also the leader of the Peace Party. And what that means to say is that in every country in Europe prior to World War I, you had a lot of social and political divisions and antagonisms. And so in the political classes of those countries, not the royals, the nobility, but the professional politicians, the people whose successors would later put us on our COVID boxes, they had peace parties and war parties among them. The war party felt that the way to get past internal division was a quick war, which would bring the people together and get everybody waving the flag. The peace party, they thought, that's not a smart idea. We need to overcome these things quietly and peacefully and slowly, because a war is just not a good idea. Well, with Franz Ferdinand's death, he was the head of the Austrian Peace Party, and that was a great loss all by itself. Anyway, so the war breaks out. Karl and Zita are now the heir and wife. They do all sorts of things associated with the war, and then 1916, Franz Joseph dies. Karl becomes emperor. And he and Zita, for the remaining 2 years of the war, will do everything they can to bring about peace. None of the politicians on either side are interested, and so it dies. And the empire dies. The infamous Woodrow Wilson, our president, insists on the Habsburgs being deposed, alongside the Hohenzollerns and so forth, or the blockade, which is starving Central Europe, will continue. As Winston Churchill put it, had it not been for Wilson's insistence on getting rid of the Habsburgs, the Hohenzollerns, the Wittelsbachs, and the rest of them, as he put it, the Hitlerite monster would never have crawled out of his sewer. But Wilson got what he wanted, and of course we ended up with World War II. Like, yes.
Thank you, sir. I have another.
Yeah, well, it was so much fun. But that weren't bad enough. Twice, they go into exile in Switzerland, twice in 1921. They try to retake the throne of Hungary. They fail. They're exiled to Madeira. And they're told if they don't abdicate their rights to the throne, they'll have no money. They won't do it, so they don't have any money. And they have to live in this rented house up in the hills where we'd already had the 1918 flu, which weakened his lungs. He caught pneumonia, which after a long and painful illness killed him. And on that last day, he said a couple of interesting things. One of them was that he was suffering that his peoples might come back together. The other was that he told his wife, when I'm dead and buried, contact the King of Spain. He will help you.
That was a cool story.
Yeah, I've just talked to him. It'll be fine. And she says, I don't see how to talk to him. And he said, no, go ahead. You'll find out it's all right. So he dies. She has nothing, nothing to lose. Contacts the King of Spain. He says, sure. Sends a battleship to get them, risks war with Britain and the other allies. They're rescued, brought back to Spain. And she asks him, why'd you do it? He said, well, the day they told me your husband was dying, I suddenly got the strangest feeling that if I didn't do something for you, the same thing would happen to my wife and children. So that was it. They kind of rolled their eyes at each other, and for the next 9 years, I guess, they lived in Spain. Then they moved to Belgium, where the oldest son, Otto, was able to continue his education. Otto, I knew, not Zita. He was able to continue his education, and eventually in 1930 came of age, was proclaimed the head of the dynasty, and did various things, including after the takeover of Germany by the Nazis. He became very connected with the anti-Nazi resistance on the part of Catholics and monarchists and so on in Germany. And he passed a lot of important information about the Nazi plans to the American ambassador in Paris, Walter Bullitt. This would turn out to be a good thing. So, 1940, Hitler hated the Habsburgs. He put prices on their heads. He invades Belgium. They flee just ahead of the Germans. They have this bizarre and wild run through collapsing France. And as they're going through, various groups of Austrian refugees, a lot of them Jewish, it's the Habsburgs. We'll join them. So by the time they got to the Spanish border, they had an entourage of about 250, 300 people with them that they picked up on the way. But the frontier had been sealed. So the question was, how do we get these people through? We can't abandon them. But as it turned out, the fellow who was in charge of that section of the border had been the chief of police in the town where they lived in Spain. So he recognized them, lets them all through. They go to Lisbon, and at President Roosevelt's invitation, go to the United States, which is where they'll spend the war years. Zita, however, she's still got a lot of children to raise and educate. So she moves on to Quebec and sends her older children to Laval University. And when the older boys graduate, not the oldest, of course, Otto was already up and around, and his next brother was in London on his behalf. But the younger boys graduated from Laval and then went to Austria, to Tyrol, to fight the resistance. It was 1944. Well, Zita is living in Canada as her children scatter. The war ends. Otto joins his brothers in Innsbruck, and they're expelled by the evil Karl Renner, the man who sold his country 3 times. Once when he betrayed Emperor Karl in 1918 and became the first Republican premier, Chancellor of Austria. Secondly, when in 1938, as leader of the Socialists, he ordered them to support the Anschluss with Germany, and he became a collaborator with the Nazis. And then, in 1945, when the Soviets invaded, he offered himself to them, and Stalin happily accepted, made him chancellor. And then, as chancellor, he expelled the Habsburgs. Even though they'd been in the resistance, he'd been collaborating. See, but that's called justice or something. And that part of the problem in Austria today is that the current establishment's legitimacy rests on Karl Renner being wonderful. If Karl Renner was not wonderful, if he was the evil scumbag that in fact he was, then the Austrian establishment have a lot of problems. So whenever anybody brings up certain realities, I got all the hubba-dubba-dub. That's nice, but what facts do you have again?
That's the official way the Austrian parliament works, right?
Well, it's the original way most politicians work today. You know, the mouths move, the hands wave, the little lips purse.
English parliament's fun to watch when they do that.
I'm sorry?
The English parliament's fun to watch sometimes when they do that.
Oh, they get very excited. Although I must say, years ago, they came up with a wonderful phrase in the British Parliament. If an MP was obviously drunk, he would stand up and say, they would say that he was tired and emotional. And that was a code word for drunk, which I like very much. I resolved if I ever pulled over for drunk driving, I'll say, officer, I'm not drunk. I'm tired and emotional. Of course, I like the meme, you know, secure stormtrooper, the current prime minister, who says there is no restriction of speech in modern Britain, and we'll jail anyone who says there is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I never thought I could dislike someone more than I dislike Tony Blair, but secure stormtrooper.
There's always a running. It's a hold my beer diet every week. It's like, hey, you're doing this, let me try to outdo that.
It's a race down the drain.
Yes,
it's jolly. But at any rate, so the long and short of it is after the war, 1950, Zita goes back to Europe to look after her mother. And then when she dies, in I think 55, Zita moves to a convent in Switzerland, and she lives there for the rest of her life, dying in 1989. But in the 80s, she undergoes a sort of reconciliation in a way. She goes to Austria without being forced to renounce the throne, which had been a rule that Karl Renner, the scumbag, had put in. Being a scumbag, you know. Yeah. Not that being a scumbag's a bad thing. I don't want to make any budding scumbags out there feel like it's something they shouldn't do. I mean, personal choices. At any rate, she met Pope John Paul II, whose father had been very devoted to her husband, named the Pope Karl after him. Yeah. And he beatified Blessed Emperor Karl. So I always say it's one of the few examples I know of where a Pope created his own namesake. But he did. And when he met her, the Pope, when he met Zita, finally said, it's a wonderful honor to finally meet my Empress. Yeah. So that, you know, that's very, to me, that's extremely touching.
Oh, yeah.
But also, her trips, she made several interviews when she went back to Austria, and became kind of popular. She did say one thing that was raised a lot of eyebrows. One of the reasons why Franz Ferdinand and Karl's father and Karl himself were the line of succession to Franz Joseph was that Franz Joseph's own son had died mysteriously in 1889 in a place called Mayerling. It was either a murder or a suicide with himself and his mistress, Maria Zita, being the prime targets / suspects.
Where was Hillary Clinton around this time?
I'm sorry?
Where was Hillary Clinton around this time?
What was happening?
Where was Hillary Clinton around this time? You said murdered or suicided. You know, the whole
don't ask me. People don't tell me these things anymore. I don't know. But no, so the bodies were discovered, and the story went out that he had gone mad and committed suicide, and that was, you know, what people accepted, shall we say. Well, Zita got people very excited by saying it was in fact a murder, and that it had been done in by people connected with Freemasonry and with particularly the then Masonic government of France. Now, behind that was the fact that Rudolf and his father had not gotten along for a very long time. And Rudolf had a lot of liberal friends, some of whom were apparently very dodgy and connected to foreign powers. And they hoped to use Rudolf against his father. Supposedly, well, one thing we do know is that before the murder or the suicide, or whatever it was, it's very much the Kennedy assassination of the 19th century.
Mhm.
What we do know is that Rudolf and his father went on a hunting trip. It's one of the few things they really have in common. And they reconciled. They had a great time together and just really, seemed like the past was dead and they would be collaborating from then on. Well, Zita hazarded the guess that this reconciliation was what ultimately would cause Rudolf to be murdered. Now, at the time, and since, a lot of people have said, well, no major scholar buys that, there's no truth to it, blah, blah, blah. However, I myself found that the monks at Heiligenkreuz, the great Cistercian abbey near Mayerling, who were the ones who received a lot of the bodies, their tradition is that Rudolph's fingers were all broken. And they suspect he was holding the table against the door, against assailants unknown. They push the table in, they break his fingers, they kill him. Obviously, if he has broken fingers, he didn't kill anybody. Well, the only way this could really be known is if they open up the sarcophagus at the Kaisergruft and look. But the head of the house will never permit that, and I think he's right. Because one of two things would happen. Either the fingers would be intact, which would mean Zita was wrong, that wouldn't be too nice, or they'd be broken. But that would open up a whole kettle of wax, which at this late date would be kind of unhelpful, especially because the various Habsburgs have tried to do other things. Yeah. Everything would focus on Mayerling for 10 or 20 years. One good thing about Mayerling, though, when the whole affair was over, Franz Joseph turned the place into a Carmelite monastery. And the nuns there pray for the repose of the souls of Rudolf and Maria Vetzera every day. And the altar of the chapel is on the exact spot where the bed they were found in lay. So it's kind of, again, a poignant thing to go to Mayerling. But that affair is what put Franz Ferdinand and Otto and Karl in succession's way. So at any rate, Zita reopened the case, as it were. Then she died in 1989. Now, something very interesting happened. You may recall that was the beginning of the fall of the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. But all of the communist countries around Austria, they've been part of Austria-Hungary, and Czechia, still Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, reenactment groups began. They began, but it was quite illegal. They began portraying regiments of the Imperial Army. And a number of these folk came to Vienna to march in Empress Zita's funeral cortege. This too marked a real change in Central Europe and presaged the fall of the Iron Curtain. It's almost as though the very last of the old order had to go before the beginning of the new order could be knocked down. At any rate, she had been very active in the cause of Blessed Karl's beatification. This was accomplished in 2004. I know because I went. But it was decided to give him as a feast day, not his death day, which is April 1st, but the day that they were married, October 21st. And when I heard that, I remember standing there in Rome with everybody else. When I heard that, I thought, they will try to canonize her too. I didn't know the hows, the whens, the wheres, the wherefores, but sure enough. So if she is beatified, her feast day will probably be his, the day of their wedding. It'll be a dual feast day. And the thing to bear in mind, too, is that Karl's beatification was very much opposed by both the Austrian government and the Austrian church. Pope John Paul II pushed it through despite them. With Zita, that opposition remained. But because of her heavy Benedictine ties, and especially her ties to Solesmes in France, her cause was being pursued by the French Diocese of Le Mans and by various Benedictine bodies. In our country, the headquarters of Empress Zita's cause is the Clear Creek Monastery in Oklahoma. The cause for Emperor Karl is in America. It's headed by the Cabeza League, the Prayer League, who are in Washington, D.C. and have a wonderful website, blessedemperorcharles.org.
Yeah.
So I recommend both very highly to you. And, it's a funny thing. For years, you didn't see any royals made servants of God or canonized to be beatified. But there have been a whole crop of them in the past 12 years. Blessed Maria Christina of Savoy, who became the last queen of Two Sicilies. Her son, Francis II, has just had his cause opened. Pardon me. Madame Elizabeth, Madame Royale, the sister of Louis XVI, had her cause reopened, or opened, I should say, as has the last Queen of Italy, last reigning Queen of Italy, Elena of Savoia, the wife of Victor Emmanuel III. She's a servant of God. This Queen Isabella, whose cause had been torpedoed by various people for supposed to be anti-Semitic, thanks no less to the late Pope Francis, has had her cause reopened, and Pope Francis himself, against the opposition of the Belgian bishops, who didn't like him because he was actually pretty orthodox, has opened the cause of King Baudouin I of Belgium, who died in 73. Sorry, 73. Died in 1993. So, it after some decades of being too in love with the whole Republican idea to seriously examine the sainthood of a lot of royals, it looks like now we're becoming grown up enough again to look at them for themselves and not according to whatever ideology it is that we espouse.
A couple of cool things about Zita was, you said, I think you mentioned she went to mass twice a day, because people might be going, look, there we go, there they go with canonization of anybody in there. No, the lady walked the walk. They were a huge Sacred Heart devotion. They were great for the people.
Yeah, and she's a great patroness for parents who have children they want to keep in the faith, for wives who want to be faithful to their husbands through thick and thin.
Yeah.
And again, she did it all while maintaining a deep femininity. Again, tough as nails, but very feminine. Very feminine.
Yeah, speaking of tough as nails part, there was a scene, was it during the war? And I guess one of somebody was trying to get into, they were talking about how great it would be for the war. And she looked at him, I think it was at a dinner table.
Yes.
And she looked at him and goes, I don't know any mother that wants this war to go on.
Well, yeah, what happened, they had a very nice dinner too. And she complained about the difficulties, the starvation that were facing the people. And this German general says, well, pulling in their belts a bit will be good for them. That's what I do my best thinking. And she said that it was easy to talk like that when you were sitting over a filled-up table.
Yeah.
Similarly, they had a prime minister shortly after they took over, or maybe shortly before, who was shot dead in a Vienna restaurant. And she was not very sympathetic. She said that at a time when people were starving in the streets, it was a little bit much for the prime minister to go publicly gorge.
Yeah. And speaking of, since food is on our mind, were they already ostracized by this time? And they're in a restaurant, and she says to Charles, "Wow, this is something that we would have back in Vienna." It ended up because the cook recognized her, and
yeah, when they were after their second attempt to retake Hungary failed, the Allies put them on a ship down the Danube, which eventually would take them to another ship, which would take them to Madeira. But they noticed that the food was awfully familiar, and they wondered about that. Till it turned out the chef had been an underchef at the Hofburg in Vienna. And as soon as he found out who the guests were, he began feeding them the kind of stuff that he had made then.
Yeah, stuff like that was just shows you the love, the devotion that the people had for them.
Well, they had an enormous amount, but again, remember, in the immortal words of Oscar Wilde, democracy is the bludgeoning of the people by the people for the people. So a few months before everything went to pieces in October of 1918, the two of them went to Pošon, Pressburg, Bratislava, the current capital of Slovakia. And I guess by the names, the very ethnically mixed population just roared and cheered them and were just all over themselves for them. And Zita said, well, these people are all very loyal. And Karl's response was, indeed they are. But like ourselves, they have no voice in the matter.
It was her upbringing. One day would be speaking only in German, another day would speak only in Spanish, and another day would just be ready for Empress.
Yeah, that was how she educated her children. Every day they had to speak a different language, and that was all they could speak for that day.
Yeah, talk about homeschooling.
Yeah, well, it wasn't quite homeschooling because she did hire tutors.
Yeah.
But they had to be some of the best available. So she did really well, all things considered, with what she had. Certainly Otto was, I knew him, and the man was phenomenal in terms of his knowledge. Someone or other described Otto as the greatest emperor that Europe never had, because he was so well prepared for the job. He knew so much. He could go anywhere. He could do anything. He could get along with anybody. And had he been Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary, King of Czechia, King of Croatia, King of Slovakia, King of Slovenia, and all Danubia. In other words, had he been at the head of the crowned head of a Habsburg Danubian Federation, which is what up until 1945 they were pushing for. Had that happened, I think he would have been remembered as one of the greatest monarchs Europe ever had. But
it seemed that when you wrote about it, there was a lot on there when you wrote about Otto when he's sent to Germany, and I think Hitler's trying to talk to him or something. He's trying to fill out who Otto is, I think is, and
yeah,
there's communication between Zita and Otto, and Zita's like, get out of there. And, but yeah, she really did mold him to something incredible.
Oh yeah. And, well, I mean, again, I knew a good deal about her before I started writing the book, but obviously you learn a lot more. I wanted it to be a book that would be standalone so that you don't have to read the earlier book on Blessed Emperor Karl. But of course, I would recommend you read both of them because they'll shed light on each other.
Yeah.
In both, I deal with facts about the other spouse that I didn't have or didn't include. But no, it's been quite a privilege, really, to bring the story of Zita to a world that has A, primarily forgotten her, and B, needs, at the very least, the lessons that she has to teach us.
Yeah, because I only think before your book, I think the only thing I knew was the funeral.
Yes. And
That
in the Karl book, I go on a bit about her adventures afterwards, but obviously that was more in focus with her contribution to the maintenance of his memory. In the Zita book, I deal with her life, and of course, she lived for a time in Athol, Massachusetts. Not Athol, I think Royalston, and in Tuxedo Park, New York, where she, for a while, in both places, she became sort of a fixture. And to this day, they refer to the home she lived in as the Empress's Palace. Royalston, in particular, if you look at the local writing about her, you would think that the greatest thing she ever did was live in Royalston. But, never argue with local patriotism.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because the kids went everywhere. One went to Mexico, one stayed in Canada, one went overseas. I think two of them fought against the Germans. I mean, the kids spread all over the place.
Oh yeah. Again, there were 8 of them.
Yeah.
And there is her children or her grandchildren, I should say. The children are all dead now, but the children had and have some of the grandchildren. Shall we say, varied memories of her. She was very hard on Otto and on his sons because she saw in them the future of the dynasty. Not so much on the younger ones. And of course, the younger children of the younger children basically saw her as a doting grandmother. That was what they got out of her. But the older ones, they got a different picture. One of the things I had to do with this book was to come up with a narrative, if you will, that everybody in the family could agree told the truth. And given how differing some of the views were, the different memories were, and so forth, that was a little bit difficult from time to time, but no more so than any other great matriarch of any other great family. Although there are a few to compare with the Habsburgs. I often get asked, do you get tired of writing about Habsburgs? And my answer is, well, could be worse. I could be writing about the Kennedys.
It could be much worse, yes.
Well, I'm just saying, but no,
I don't think JFK went to the front like Karl was, and delivering food to the front and things like that, and Zita being right there with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't imagine JFK and Jackie in Vietnam.
No.
That would have, or even LBJ and Lady Bird.
Yeah. I mean, FDR wasn't going over to the front. I mean, even at that time, Woodrow wasn't doing that. I mean,
no, but he could have sent Eleanor. I mean, she'd have frightened the Germans away.
Sure.
But at any rate, the other thing too, this is a question I do touch on, I think, in the Zita book, and I certainly in the Karl book, is why they are so popular in the United States. 32 shrines so far to Kaiser Karl in
Yeah.
America
Yeah.
when he was our enemy. And
Yeah.
you know how we are about our enemies. We hate them. They're just terribles. Well, I thought long and hard about why that this popularity should exist. And I think it's because, well, number one, you know, we Americans, I like to say, we are the world's longest lived and most successful Oedipus complex.
Mhm.
We got rid of Daddy back in 1776, and apart from recreating him during difficult times like Lincoln and Roosevelt, other than that, we can't stand royalty, we can't stand Daddy. But Karl and Zita represent a kind of self-sacrificial leadership that we're not used to. We're used to leaders who don't mind sending us to our deaths and spending our money. But a leader who would risk himself on our behalf? Oh, no.
I guess there's the people. People are excited about them. I don't think there's a politician that's come out saying, "I love these two right there. I want to make our lives like that." I mean,
yeah, you're not going to see that. I mean,
nah.
you know, the congressman declaring, "Let's all of us go to Afghanistan and take the place for 3 days of X number of soldiers."
Yeah.
You're not going to see that.
Is there a third? Are you going to want something on Otto later on, or is this just going to be the 2 books?
So, unfortunately, one thing and another has delayed my finishing the book. But what it will be is a collection of the Archduke Otto's writings about America. And basically, I mean, the introductory chapters, or the first one is about the Habsburgs and America in general. You know, the fact that they put $25 million into the church in America between 1829 and 1914. They funded 400 missionaries, including St. John Neumann and Bishop Moraga. They built over 300 parishes in the United States. Now, see, that's not remembered in Europe because, you know, the Rennerites get very upset about anything good the Habsburgs did because they have their little steaming heap of divinity they have to worship. And it's not remembered by us because although we Americans have so many virtues, I mean, we ooze with virtue, it just pours out of every one of our pores. Despite all the virtues we have, gratitude is not one of them.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And so we don't remember that we didn't do this ourselves. See, the funny thing about the Habsburg contributions to the Church in America, you often hear, you know, the moving mouths in academia and other industries yapping about how government, Spanish, French, etc., subsidies of missionary work was for colonialism and so forth. There was nothing the Habsburgs could get out of the United States. It was sheer altruism. And of course, we paid them back the way we pay everybody back.
Yeah.
If you don't believe me, ask the French and the Spanish. Let's see, without them, the revolution wouldn't have succeeded. So how do we screw them over the most?
Uh-huh.
There's an old saying, you know, it is dangerous to be an enemy of the United States, but it's lethal to be an ally. And,
exactly.
well, you know, it really is. Anyhow, long and the short of it is that the first part of it will deal with the Austrian connections with America. The second, the Habsburg connections. The second will deal with Otto's time in America, and he wasn't just here during the war. He came back over and over again, and he was very involved with the foundation of magazines like the National Review and Triumph.
Uh-huh.
He was very closely involved with people like Russell Kirk.
Yeah.
You know, Brent Bozell.
Buckley.
What's that?
Buckley too.
Well, yeah,
Buckley?
well, Buckley somewhat.
Yeah.
But he was, and of course, von Kunnert, the Dean, Thomas Molnar, people like that. So, Fritz Williamson. So I had a friend, John Wisner, who knew all these folks, who was sort of a mentor to a lot of them. Papa John, they called him. But when he would correspond with Archduke Otto, he would address him as Austria. But at any rate, so he played a role in the conservative movement in the States in the 50s and 60s. When I was a kid in the 70s, he had a column in our Archdiocesan newspaper, The Tidings. So I'm going to look at that side of his commentary on the States, his observations about America, sort of casting him as the new de Tocqueville. Because you see, after the war, after 45, he had a problem. Prior to 45, starting with Franz Ferdinand, the family had always been about a Danubian federation under the Habsburgs. Well, 1945 made it obvious that was not going to happen. As early as 1919, 1920, a fellow called Richard von Coudenhove-Kalergi, yes, I know, he was briefly a Freemason. Yeah, okay, I get it. It always amazes me that if an individual has had anything to do with the Freemasons for a short period, everyone jumps up and down about it. But they never seem to care or notice about the founding fathers or the initiation of the Capitol, the White House, the Washington Monument with Masonic rights. You know, I don't know what to say. I mean, yeah, but he was a Mason for 4 years. Yeah, unlike Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah,
Unlike
really everybody was.
I just, but you know, if we traditional Catholics are so smart, we wouldn't have lost to enemies who are so stupid.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The only way you can lose to a really moronic enemy is to be stupider. Oh, shoot, you're dumb. I'm the king of stupid, not you, me. I'm dumber than you could ever be. And if you don't believe it, I'll prove it to you. To which your opponent could always say, well, okay,
proceed.
Have at it. But at any rate, I digress. So the long and the short of it is that Coudenhove-Kalergi, whatever you say about him, he had some wiggy ideas, to be sure, but what no one can take away from him, or his Pan-Europa movement, is that he predicted that if Europe did not pull itself together and regain its, yes, Christian principles, she would end up divided between the Soviet Union and the United States. And what happened? I don't get it. What could that mean? Gee, wait a minute. He figured that out 25 years before it happened. Maybe he wasn't so much of a dum-dum. Yeah, maybe not. So in 1945, Otto finds himself with the familial premise impossible. The United States is not going to accept a monarchy, a restoration, any more than the Soviet Union will. Because, of course, the Soviet Union and the United States are a lot closer ideologically than anybody wants to admit, that either of them would want to admit. But in the essentials, I mean, they have the same basic view of man. This was brought home to me the umpteenth time by Tucker Carlson when he interviewed Vladimir Putin. And he asked Putin the money question, which neither he nor Putin got the import of what was said. Carlson says, do you see the hand of God in world affairs? Putin says no. Well, there you have it, the politician of the 20th century. The brainless mouth. Because when you say that, what you're saying is there's no point to it all.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, you know, if I put a bullet through my brain, or you did, there'd be no difference between then and now. Now, I'm not saying they should put bullets through their brains. Don't get me wrong.
Yes, this is for entertainment purposes only, please.
I'm sorry?
This is for entertainment purposes only.
Entertainment purposes only. Don't try to sit at home, kids. not, not available or prohibited by law. Sorry,
Yes.
no CODs.
If there's any GUNs, it's a Nerf gun.
Operators are standing by. Be the first on your block. But the thing is that that is the leadership of the 20th century. It's what all the masters are, 21st century now. So Otto had to try to come up with a way to live out his family mission in the midst of what he found himself in. He did that in several different ways. One was by helping the nascent conservative movement in the United States. Another was by helping similar movements in Europe. The CEDI, which is sort of a conservative press agency, Neues Abendland, which was a German language conservative group that were later gutted mercilessly by the evil rag they called Der Spiegel. So that was one thing. But eventually he converted, as you might say, to the idea of a united Europe as the successor of Charlemagne's attempts. Now, this sounds weird to us today, looking at the EU we see.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's if you look at the founding fathers purely through what the United States are now, you'd have a much worse view of them. That's why we're trained not to think of them, through the present. So what did you have with the founding of the EU? Well, gotta go back a little bit further. Up until 1945, Catholic conservatism in Europe basically had 5 points. The altar, that is to say, the predominance of the church in public affairs. The throne, a monarch legitimized by the church and given his authority from God, who had sufficient power to, as Franz Joseph put it, protect his people from their politicians. The third were local liberties, local rights, what we would call subsidiarity.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth was class cooperation, the idea of the nation as a family. What was called in those days things like corporatism and solidarism and guild socialism and distributism and all that, generally on the basis of what specific aspect they were looking at. But all of that today we would call solidarity. Mm-hmm. And then lastly but not leastly, the idea of all such countries organized in such a way as belonging to a greater whole. Christendom, the Holy Empire, Abendland, the Occident. That of the 5, that was the Vegas. All right. Well, 1945, Europe is divided into the great diarchy between the United States and the Soviet Union. Neither of the occupiers, so the Soviet occupiers aren't going to allow anything except communism, so they're not a problem. We would not tolerate the altar, the throne, or Christendom. So what does that leave? It does leave subsidiarity and solidarity. And it was on that basis that Christian democracy was born after the war. So the major Christian democratic leaders, each of whom incidentally has been up for canonization at one point or another, Adenauer of Germany, Schumann of France, and Gasperi of Italy, they were the ones who came up with the idea of a European Union. And because they were all very devout Catholics, they had in mind the crown of Charlemagne as a symbol and all that kind of thing. Not realizing that a crown without a head, to wear it, is just a crown without a head. So, long and short of it, they pushed for what they would be allowed to get. They did the best they could. But bear in mind that from 1945 until 1990, 91, all real decisions in Europe were made in either Washington or Moscow. And after 91, they were made in Washington. So European leadership gradually became very, for want of a better word, infantilized. And it morphed into the kind of tyrannical munchkins that they are now. This was the context against which the Archduke Otto lived his life. And of course, a big part of what he did was fighting communism and keeping the memory of free Central Europe alive. So he played a big part in the fall of the wall, things like the Pan-European picnic and so forth. And after that, an amazing achievement. I mean, people forget what a wonderful thing it was to the fall of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Iron Curtain. But I mean, when I was in college, I went to a military college, and most of us didn't think we were going to see age 30. We died fighting the Soviets. And that was just a given. We didn't question it. And so that didn't happen. You know, that's why I'm here with a lot of my classmates to speak to you now. Is that horrible future didn't happen.
Right.
And Otto died in 2011. Sadly, long enough to see the EU begin to go bad, but not to where it is today.
Yeah, imagine him now. Charles Coulombe, there's the two books. It'll be linked below in the show notes. Zita, Empress of Austria, Queen of Hungary, and Blessed Charles of Austria, the Holy Emperor, and his legacy. I'll link him and Charles and I's interview we did on Karl. And I told Vinny I'll put you guys up on the thing too, the latest show you two do, because Charles and Vinny get together every Monday for your routine weekly show, right? Still,
that's for sure. We had to take, unfortunately, a 6-week-long hiatus this summer, which was not fun. But we're back in the saddle. We're going to do one more show here on Saturday, and then our next will be, I'll be back in Austria. We'll be doing this whole split thing again.
How many more years you got back out there?
I'm sorry?
How many more years you got of study out there?
Oh, I graduated 2 years ago.
Oh.
I just, with one thing and another, the place that I'm at, the ITI, the International Theological Institute in Trumau, and I'm not faculty or anything, I'm just sort of at the moment, a local bumpkin. But honestly, as far as the BA goes, it's comparable to any place like TAC or Christendom or any of these great places, except that it's in Austria. And they take American student loans. The language of instruction is English. Did I mention you're in Austria? And you've got when you're in Austria, you're no more than 200 euros from anywhere else in Europe. But wait, there's more. The graduate program in theology, it's a pontifical program. And in my humble estimation, it is simply the most orthodox. And now, mind you, I know Christendom and a couple of other places are trying to come up with, St. Mary's Twickenham, are trying to come up with comparable programs. And I wish them luck, because there are more people who want this kind of education than there are spaces to provide it, if that makes sense. So I don't look at it as rivalry, but the ITI's program is the best I know of. It's the most orthodox I know of in terms, certainly, of pontifical institutions. And I would recommend to all your college-age audience who are watching this, or their parents, to look into the ITI in Trumau, the International Theological Institute. And who knows, if you or your loved one goes there this year or the next, or the one following, maybe the one after that, you'll have the dubious pleasure of meeting me in person. Emphasis on dubious. But again, it's been a question of the moment where I think I can do the most good.
Mhm.
There's a whole generation of young minds out there that need to be abused and smacked around. No, sorry, that came out wrong.
Did I say that out loud? Did I say
Well,
death camps? I meant happy camps.
I do have to admit that I enjoy Yiddish momming the students. I do. It's true, No, I understand, kids. You've got more important things to do. I'll be fine. No, it's all right. You go along. I wouldn't want you to feel guilty. And you know what makes me happy about that is that they don't anymore.
Yeah.
During COVID, I was locked down there with them for the holidays for 2 or 3 years running. So I'm happy to say I introduced a whole new generation to Guy Lombardo.
I bet you did.
Oh yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be New Year's Eve at the ITI without the strains of Guy Lombardo playing Old Lang Syne. So it's a great place. The community life is great. I would say probably 3/4, maybe 2/3 of the students are American. They have people from other English-speaking countries, of course, and a lot of Central Europeans whose English is good enough for them to attend the classes. And we have Chinese, we have a sprinkling of Africans. I mean, it's a very tight-knit community on the one hand, it's very multicultural on the other.
Mhm.
So
Cool.
that's my plug for the dear old ITI.
Yeah. You're not in real estate out there. You're getting a promotion for anything.
I'm sorry. Let me put my hand back. It's reflex. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Yes. Well, again, check out the links underneath. Type in SF15. You get 15% off your orders for 10, and they get the Zita and Charles book. You won't be disappointed in that read. Again, it's a great story. Maybe we turn into a movie one day. That'd be a great film if it did. And, you'd have to make sure it didn't get too liberal ideas in that idea as well.
Well, the thing is about Karl and Zita, they were the product of a religious culture, of a political culture that is completely alien to our own. And all I can say when people ask me, well, how can you compare that? I say the only way I know to compare different systems is the one our Lord gave us.
Mm-hmm.
By their fruits you shall know them. Their system produced people like, I don't know, them.
Yeah.
Ours produces ours.
Look at Wilson's life. Yeah, compare Wilson and Karl.
Woodrow Wilson, let me tell you something, smart guy. Woodrow Wilson took a demotion to become president of the United States. Mm-hmm. He had to step down from being president of Princeton University. Can you imagine that kind of abuse, that insult?
That's probably why he was so angry and wanted to destroy half the planet.
No, yeah, believe me, if he could have gone back to Princeton, he would have. Actually, that's not a joke. I will say this much, though. I have stood by Zita's tomb in the Kaiserhof to the Hofburg. I have stood by Karl's tomb on the Isle of Madeira. I have stood by Woodrow Wilson's tomb at the National Cathedral in Washington, where he was entombed, even though he was Presbyterian, not Episcopalian. All 3 places, I crossed myself. At the first 2, it was part of prayer. The third, an Episcopal clergyman asked me, are you crossing yourself in prayer? And I said, no, it's for protection.
Charles, always a pleasure, man. That's again, thanks for coming on. Get the books, will be on the show notes, and we'll have to figure out sometime to do another one like this.
That'll be good. Looking forward to it. It's been too long, and don't let it wait till another world pandemic.